So, recently UFC has been hitting a lot of lows lately. Don't get me wrong, UFC 308 was really good. The main event of UFC 307 was really good. But we have a really problem with inactive champions, referees, judging. We can get into everything wrong with the UFC right now. But recently, uh, Darren Till came out and pleaded with the UFC to bring back Francis Ngannou, and I cannot agree anymore. So I'm gonna pull this up here. As you can see from the headline, former UFC star pleads for Dana White to put aside personal grudge with Francis Ngannou and book John Jones fight. Just make the effing fight. Like, here's the thing. I am a huge fan of Francis Ngannou. Initially, I am a big Stipe fan too. I was butthurt that he won, but once I learned about Francis's story, like you cannot uh, hate on Francis and his story. Uh, but yeah, well, let's just get into the article. We're gonna read this. I'm gonna give you my opinion, and we're gonna talk about this from a UFC standpoint, a Francis standpoint, obviously a PFL standpoint, since he's under contract and is the current champion of PFL. A former UFC star recently weighed in on Dana White's recent comments about Francis Ngannou and pleaded for him to put his personal grudge aside. He noted that fans want to see the best fights possible and suggested he book a cross-promotion fight with the Predator and John Jones. I would say right now we all want to see John versus Tom, right? I'm one of the few ones where I'm actually really excited to see Stipe versus John Jones. Although I've wanted that fight for years, and I think it obviously would have been a lot better if this is prime Stipe versus prime John Jones. But I'm still in for the fight. I still want to see it. But you cannot deny, man, that the heavyweight division, um, ever since Francis left, has been really stale. And John Jones knows something about leaving a division in shambles. I mean, we can get into however many times he left 205 in shambles. Now he hasn't fought um, in the heavyweight division since March of last year. Should be fighting in a few weeks. So, anyways, let's continue. Darren Till is known for expressing his opinion and has been in his fair share of beefs as a result. He sounded off on the UFC CEO's latest comments about PFL heavyweight king and suggested that he put business ahead of personal feelings. For years, Ngannou versus John Jones was a dream fight, but failed to materialize when the Predator was with the promotion. During his latest appearance on Ariel Helwani's show, the Englishman shared his thoughts on the heavyweight division and expressed interest in seeing the two heavyweight champions collide in a cross-promotion bout. Till mentioned he likes White personally, but wants to see Ngannou and Jones fight because of the significance it would have. As much as I love Dana White, just make the fucking fight with Francis Ngannou and Jones. We don't care that you don't like Francis or Francis doesn't like you. Guess what? We don't care. UFC always been the best because we give the best fights. Let's just watch John Jones versus Tom Aspinall, Francis Ngannou versus John Jones, and let them all fight. We just want to see the best fights. I completely agree. Um, I legitimately think that Francis Ngannou is probably the best heavyweight in the world. I'm a huge Jones fan. I have been ever since I was a kid. But man, like Francis Ngannou, like before he left the UFC, he was just getting into being a well-rounded martial artist. He showed off his wrestling in the Cyril Gone fight, obviously coming back to win that fight. But man, like Renan Ferreira to me, he is definitely better than like I would say 90 95% of the heavyweights um, in the UFC right now, and that's because you have your athletic heavyweights that are taking over, your John Jones, your Stipe's, Tom Aspinall, Cyril Gone, but then obviously you have your heavier guys that aren't athletic and just have a ton of power. Um, all right. Okay, there we go. Former UFC star Darren compares Francis Ngannou versus John Jones debacle to boxing. It kind of is. It kind of is. Former UFC star Darren continued his rant on the ongoing Francis Ngannou versus Jones debacle by comparing it to boxing fights never materializing due to personal grudges among the promoters. During the aforementioned clip, Till mentioned that fans just want to see the best fighters competing against each other, and turned his attention to the boxing promoters and blasted them for putting their feelings ahead of the fighters and fans. Again, like Dana White is very, very aware of this, and for the most part, in the UFC, we get the fights that we want. I would honestly say, apart from Silva GSP, obviously, that's probably the biggest fight that ever happened. Anthony Joshua, John Jones, that didn't happen for other reasons. But, like, we used to get all these fights that we wanted. Like, we wanted Islam Volkanovski, we got it. We wanted, I don't know, like, you go look at any of the fights from a few years ago. We were getting all these fights. Like, again, it goes to activity and it goes to the UFC as business. But, anyways, um, we don't care. You're just a promoter. Shut your mouth and make the fight. Eddie Hearn. We don't care what Oscar De La Hoya is saying about you. But at the end of the day, can we wait to get you to make all these fights? Javante is still fighting these absolute bums, which is true. Why is he not fighting Haney? That is a big boxing fight that I want to see, but I gotta be honest, I'm kind of done with boxing at this point. I just, like, it's way worse than MMA. Like, MMA, we're having our own issues with, like, boxing now is, brutal. I guess that's the end of the article. But, like, let's look at this from the standpoint of the UFC, right? So, the UFC right now is, it did have a lot of highs this year. I'd say the Abu Dhabi card was alright. There have been moments, but the UFC is kind of heading into stale territory. It has to do with certain people becoming champions. It has to do with contenders and champions not being active. And like John Jones versus Francis Ngannou was the fight we all wanted, right? Even though, like I said, I wanted the Stipe fight for years, John Jones versus Francis Ngannou is one of the most interesting, if not the most interesting heavyweight fight out there. Um, Obviously Tom Aspinall is very similar to Francis Ngannou in the fact that he's finishing everybody in the first round. But like I said earlier, the Francis that we saw against Renan Ferreira is the new Francis. And I don't know, man. It's tough because we've only seen like a minute of John Jones, and we really didn't see anything in that what you would call it Silicon fight. Um, but like man, the UFC needs Francis. That's just the number one point I can make. The UFC needs stars right now. They need marketable talent. And the problem is that like a lot of these guys, they either do have they do have the personality, or do have, or they have the talent, but they won't have both of them. Like you look at a guy like Walking Buckley, right? He's on the rise. He has everything. He's an entertaining fighter. He gets the community riled up. He makes headlines. Like somebody like Walking Buckley, right? He's a guy you can turn into a star. He's a guy that you can throw on a pay per view and people will buy it either to watch him win or to watch him lose. Um, you know, especially in the heavyweight division too, where I feel like heavyweight is kind of the in between a transition period of athletic heavyweights taking over the more traditional heavyweights. Like no, you think of your old heavyweights to like your Tank Abbott's, your Tim Sylvia's, Mark Hunt. Even though Mark Hunt was wickedly talented, that is a horrible, horrible example. Mark Hunt was really talented. He was a really talented kickboxer. Um, well, like you look at heavyweight now, you got people like Jolton Almeida, John Jones is a champion, Tom Aspinall is an interim champion. Like heavyweight now has these freaks of nature, really. Uh, Guys that are, built full of muscle that weigh in at 265. But yeah. Overall though, like I said, I fully agree with Darren Till. I think they need to bring back Francis. They need to do the John Jones fight. And Tom Aspinall versus Francis Ngannou is a really good fight. I really want that fight. Oh my god. That really is like because John Jones is probably gonna retire, Stipe is gonna retire. Um Francis, well, I guess John Jones might retire. It's sounding like he'll fight Tom. But like Tom Aspinall versus Francis Ngannou really is like one of the most massive fights they can make. Um, and I mean too, you can do the Silgon rematch. Volkov is coming into his own lately. Uh, you know, there's a lot of There's a lot more interesting fights at heavyweight for Francis. Um, than there was before he left. But yeah, I kind of think I'm just running in circles. So all I could say is bring him back. But let me know in the comments, what do you think about Darren Till? Darren Till's comments say? What do you think about the UFC burying the hatchet with Francis. And really, I out of all the beefs that Dana and the UFC have had with fighters, this one is the most solvable one. This isn't like a couture situation. Um, but yeah, that's all I got. Um, I don't know if I'll record another video after this. I don't know. I may go look at some things. But yeah, thanks for watching. Later.